Hello? Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for Extreme Hangout. Today, the first panel of the day is Imagining a Century of Sustainable Development. This is curated by One Young World, and this is the fourth panel that they have joined us for in this Hangout. This will be a conversation incorporating futuristic development exploration, strategic planning and sustainability, and insights into future challenges and opportunities. Please join me in giving them a massive round of applause as we welcome them to the stage today.
Our, yeah, I think.
Sorry? Yes. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. We're so glad to have you all here. My name is Angela Williams, and I am the president and CEO of United Way Worldwide, and I am incredibly honored and excited to be joined by a panel of incredible, talented, world-changing women. Young women, I might add. And so being on the panel today with them inspires for me hope and excitement for the generation that's coming up behind me and our leaders. I don't even want to use the word future leaders because each of these young women are leaders in their own right. I also want to thank One Young World for the opportunity to be here today. I had the pleasure of being a keynote speaker at One Young World in October in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And that was the first time I had ever engaged with One Young World. I came away just really excited to be around hundreds of young people that are excited about about making a difference in the world for the issues that they face in their local communities and in their countries and in their region. And so now being here at COP28, we're here to explore issues that affect our planet. As I just said recently to someone, there is no plan B for our planet. So it's vitally important that all of you and all of us are instruments in ensuring that we make a difference now to save our planet. So please join me this morning in welcoming first Karla Godoy da Costa Lima, who is the Executive Secretary of Sustainable Development of Pernambuco in Brazil.
Hello, everyone.
I'd also like to introduce Joy Egbe, who is the Chief Impact Officer for New Digit in Nigeria.
Hi, good to be here.
I also want to welcome Rumetha Al-Busai, I am so sorry, Al-Busai,
Yes, you got it right. Yeah.
who is incredible. And just before we came up on stage, I said, okay, we're going to have to do something together in the U.S., but she's in Oman. She's a member of the Arab Youth Council for Climate Change and just presented a white paper to the leaders yesterday on what the youth think in this region about climate change.
Wow.
And last, but of course not least, is Leticia Meke, climate advocator at Youth Climate Action Coalition Mozambique.
Thank you.
So, even if we were to stay here all day, we wouldn't even begin to tap the wisdom of these young women and what they have to share about the issue today. But what I do want to do is start with a very general question so that you can hear from each of them. And then what I'd like to do is, if we have time, continue to have further discussion. But I don't know if the organizers are allowing us to take comments or questions from the audience. But if you are, I certainly think that would be wonderful to hear from you as well, because all of us are in this together. So, because you all have varied expertise, but yet you have the same goal in mind as world changers and addressing climate, here's the question. In your respective areas of expertise, what do you see as the most promising developments, innovations, or trends that will shape the future of sustainable development? So we'll start with Joy and go down the line.
Sure. Yes, thank you for that question. I think the concept or the subject of sustainable development has evolved over time. even before the general established sustainable goals, which was in 2015, the world we live in right now has always seen a need of, sustainably using our resources, to, and at the same time, developed economic capacity and social well-being. So the term has always been, we've seen a need to do that. However, the recent or the current sustainable concept that we talked about right now, emphasis placed more on environmental sustainability, social well-being, and economic capacity, because these three things are interconnected, and you can't solve one and leave the other. And if you look into the climate change, or the world climate change, it's interconnected to everything. You look into all the goals, like I've seen climate effects. If you look into the agriculture, climate change is going to affect you, and there's no food. Every single thing is interconnected. So in terms of what are the trending things that we think we can put in place for our world to be a better place in the next 100 years to come is basically, I know there have been a lot of, for me, I work in the energy sector, and my goal is to eradicate energy poverty in Africa, starting from my country, Nigeria. So I know there have been a lot of innovation and trend on how we can R&D research on energy storage, energy efficiency and optimization work. I also believe that because I work in green hydrogen, we're talking about it backstage, and it's something that has a potential to elevate the world in terms of energy access, but we're not talking about it that much. There's not much buzz around it the way I think we should talk about it. For someone like me that I come from Africa, where we have a lot of space, we have the wind, we have the sun, and we're still dealing with energy poverty. Hydrogen just, like the general saying, hydrogen is the energy of the future. It has the potential to transform our world. All we need is investment into innovation, R&D, and the rest is sustainable future.
Wow, so you just make it seem like we have the solution, we're just not doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joy.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start thanking One in World and Angela for being here. If I may, I would like to talk about two things. As a young political scientist and a government actor, I think that the trend that I'm seeing is youth participation. I think that youth participation is way more present now in national, international debates. I think that we have the chance and the power to influence, to create the future that we want, and to participate creating in that future. I think that climate change is going to impact so much in our futures. Like when I do the math and I calculate, like, oh my gosh, how old am I going to be like in 2040 or like 2030 or in COP30? Like, what is that for me? Like what is waiting for me there? And another thing is technological development. I think, as Joy said, like we have there like green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, or so many other technological solutions that we are developing and that we can develop in the future, that when I think about, I don't see the future with that much fear, but with hope. But we do need to act fast. We do need to be more active in actually delivering, because we don't have that much time. But I think that with youth participation and technological development, we can achieve something in the future for sure.
Yes, great.
So I think connecting both together, the main question that is very important for us as young people to also ask is what the future holds and how can I be the best ancestor for the future. And I think that is a question that has been grappling with my mind for a very long time, as in what can I actually do? And the voice, as you mentioned, youth participation is at an all-time high, but we need to kind of increase it even more. I think that is one of the main key things that we can ensure that there is mitigation and adaptation to all the things that we're talking about when it comes to climate change. But also ideally, we have technologies that already exist, but we need to kind of push that momentum forward, be it in hydrogen or energy efficiency, or be it in nature-based solutions, specifically when it comes to our relationship with nature, which is kind of far removed as we kind of embrace a lot of technological advances. So how do we kind of capitalize on that and the knowledge that we already have from our ancestors to kind of connect things together? And I think that conversation is much needed to kind of push forward a lot of the things that we're discussing in this conference as well, and what the future that we're actually seeing for our future generations. So it can go in the likes of bringing in more indigenous knowledge into the discussion, engaging more indigenous youth within how we do things, which I think is getting better, specifically with this COP, having a lot of representation when it comes to that, but we need more of that. But also in terms of how can we foster a lot of more of that innovation and technologies that kind of connect nature with us as well. I think that's the way forward that connects both points that were mentioned.
Thank you. And I want to come back to you because I want you to share with us a few highlights from your presentation on yesterday. But Leticia.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to point out two things in my inner experience. The first one, when we are talking about children and youth in Mozambique, we did a survey with the children and youth in all 12 provinces in Mozambique, and we identified that the children and youth in Mozambique want to participate in designing, implementation, and monitoring of climate change policies in Mozambique, and not just being spectators, but be real actors in this process and have the capacity building to be in these forums like COP, being advocating for the children and youth voices. And the second one is I work as an environmental specialist in climate agriculture, smart agriculture. And one of the things that I identify to achieve sustainable development is to integrate in the early phase of the agriculture project in Mozambique the local acknowledgement of the especially young women to achieve sustainable development.
That's fantastic. And so what you did in Mozambique was the same thing you did with the Arab youth. And so you did a study in all 12 regions of Mozambique. I want you to talk about what was done with the youth in the Arab states.
Sure. So what we did was basically survey 5,000 young people from all over the 26 Arab nations. This is the first of its kind study because unfortunately for a lot of the studies that you tend to search for, it's quite selective in terms of which region you're speaking about. And the priorities, I can tell you right now, of all 26 countries are completely different. They're not the same. So it was an effort to kind of bring in the whole representation, being as inclusive as possible. So we went all the way from Mauritania, all the way to Somalia, Djibouti, and the GCC countries up north to the Levant. And what was interesting is, in addition to the survey that we did, we had dialogues, 500 dialogues that were conducted all over the cities of the Arab nations that were led by youth from their cities, having guiding questions to kind of ask what they think. And what was interesting was the results. Climate anxiety doubled from the survey that we did the year before. The priorities when it comes to what matters to them is quite interesting as well. So you have Sudan specifically that are witnessing conflict at the moment, and their priority kind of went high in terms of having peace more than climate change.
Yes.
While you have the GCC countries who are experiencing extreme heat, which I think everyone has been complaining about right now. Winter has not been like this. I can tell you as someone from the region, this is extreme as well. So that came very top of their priorities. But we also translated that into policy recommendations of what young people wanted from their decision makers. And the promise was for the young people that if you work with us, we will make sure that each representative of the ministers of climate change will have unfortunately for the Arab countries, a lot of the ministers of youth are actually not young people. And also you have women ministers who are not women, so that was a whole other discussion. The other thing as well was lot of budding young researchers that would like to kind of unlock that financing. And the last thing was to really cultivate those innovations that are coming out of the region to really push forward that agenda. Those were the three main top priorities for policy recommendations that needed to kind of be included. At the moment, none of those policies, all three are not included, except for the UAE that have a quota when it comes to youth participation. All the other 25 don't have any. So that kind of spurred a lot of discussions, very uncomfortable yesterday because everyone was trying to kind of justify a lot of their priorities as well. But overall, it was a success, I would say, to really bring in those voices in.
Wow,
Wow.
that's fantastic. Yes. So one of the things, Joy, that you mentioned was the interconnectedness, and that there are all aspects that tie into environment. But I want you all to, just from your own personal experiences and your points of view and advocacy, what do you see, or what would you say are some of the discussions that we need to have about interconnectivity, whether it's mental health, whether it's education, whether it's, what are you all saying, health? What is your perspective?
For me, I believe that most times when we talk about climate change, especially for our leaders or for people who don't really, know what we're talking about in terms of experience, because I came from a community where every day you see these things happening. And I was telling someone that when you talk about climate change in Nigeria, people are not thinking about the temperature. People are not thinking about the polar bears, because that is not happening in Nigeria. What we are thinking about is that I'm a farmer and there was no rain and there's no food, and my kids can't go to school. People are waking up in the morning and they want to go in their daily business to get money to eat, to get food. So if you're telling me about climate change, how does that affect me? And me changing my lifestyle, how does that change the process? So most time, we are talking about the general concept. Oh, the temperatures are rising, we need 1.5, da, 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 da. But the thing is that the people at the forefront of the crisis, they don't understand this process.
Yes.
Like my grandmother that is in the village, she's not here. She doesn't even know what we're talking about. She doesn't know what COP is. I mean, try to explain to her. She doesn't understand. There's heat wave in some part of Nigeria right now, and people are complaining that so much heat, and we don't know what is going on. People are getting sick. But we are here talking about climate change. How do we connect these things? And most time, I think my advice is that the grassroots education is really important from ground, because most time we talk about climate change from the international perspective, and I'm sorry to say, but the Western want to tell us how climate change should be in Africa.
Yeah.
But it's different for us because we are expressing these things separately. And for example, my grandma, she doesn't know what all this English is. Please simplify this to me. What is happening to me? Like, there's heat wave, I'm sick.
Yes.
There's the waters are not clean, I'm getting sick, and there's typhoid. How do we address this? So the focus is not just addressing the climate change. It comes with a lot of social issues. We have regions in Nigeria where there's displacement. I'm from that region, the north central of Nigeria. So there's crisis within herders and farmers, and people are being displaced from their home. And these things is a result of climate crisis because there's drought and there's no water for the animals to eat, or green pastures, and the herders who are a bit violent, chase out the farmers from their land. And these people don't understand what it is, because most times in Nigeria we say it's political issues, it's political crisis, it's civil, there's so many names for them, but these things are interconnected. And for farmer who is having a low yield as well, to him, you feel like things have changed. The rain patterns has changed, the land is no more fertile as it used to be. But this is climate change. How do we address this? You can't address just the issue with the land. You can't address just the issue with insecurity. You can't just address the health issue. You need to address it from the root, which is climate change. So I think there's a lot of disparity about all the things that are happening around climate change, and the main root. So my advocacy is basically focused on, let's address the root. Address the root, and at the same time, we know that this thing is connected with other things. Make life easy, make life better for people. So,
But you said a lot, but address the root using plain language that your grandmother understands.
yeah.
That speaks to her and what's happening to what she's experiencing on a daily basis. What about the rest of y'all? Jump in on the conversation.
Well, I think that when we talk about climate change, at least in Latin America and Brazil and developing nations, I think that we need to talk about economic disparities and poverty. We know that poor people are not the ones polluting more the world. And when we compare to rich nations, rich people, we see that there is a disparity there. And climate change is going to impact more and faster and first the poor people. So when we are working in the favelas of Brazil, when we are thinking about public policy in Pernambuco, in my state, we need to address that too, because people in the favelas are worried about eating and being safe rather than, oh my gosh, what is climate change? And doing that, like reducing that economic disparity and giving more education and public awareness about what climate change is and what climate change is going to impact their lives and putting them in the conversation too, because there is no point in making public policy in the top and being implemented in the bottom without their participating in creation and implementation of that. So when we talk about climate change and the impact of climate change in people's lives, we need to think about how are people different? How is climate change going to impact their lives in different ways, and how can we put them in the conversation being part of the answer, but also taking into consideration that they are also different, right? Like the impacts are different. I think that if we reduce economic disparities, we are also going to help tackling climate change too.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to
You
go on?
can.
Please.
I would like to share about the experience of Mozambique, and I will stick with Joy because I will do the interconnection about climate change, food security, and be safe. When we are talking about cyclones, in Mozambique in 2019 we faced Idai cyclone, Kenneth cyclone, and so on, 5 cyclones in 2 years.
Wow.
And what I would say for people in Mozambique or trying to explain what is climate change, where the people want to be safe. And when we are with the smallholder farmers, they want to know what they're gonna eat in the other day. So I think again we need to always have the conversation with the smallholder farmers, with the children and youth, and how we can together overcome the challenge of climate change in the grassroots solutions. So it's something that I wanted to share with you. Yeah.
I'll add on to the importance of inclusivity. You mentioned a bit about economic disparity, and we know that, for instance, women are more facing the brunt of climate change more than others. And one of the key ways that we could also kind of come together is kind of ensure that women have the basic skills to actually have climate resilience. I'll give you an example of where I come from. So like Mozambique, we now have cyclones, and based on the latest studies, climate studies for the country, we're expecting to have a Category 5 cyclone once every 5 years, which is quite intense. But in the same time, when we look at who has the basic resilience skills, majority of the women don't swim, don't know how to survive basically in these instances because they're kind of sheltered as a result of how the society is constructed. And I think it's quite important to kind of keep that in mind as well, to ensure that the entire of society is within the same par and level to be able to survive these issues. Like they'll be able, if women are able to swim, they'll be able to save a lot of their family members from drowning rather than not, and waiting for someone to save them. Just a very simple example. Giving that economic empowerment as well to be able to own lands, to be able to have that agricultural sources of income and whatnot, not being the person or the gender that is expected to stay at home to take care of the family while everyone else is out there earning a living. So I think that inclusivity is very important to be included in the discussion, to really have everyone within the same level when it comes to really, are we all ready to kind of face the impacts of climate change? And are we all empowered by policies to actually be participating in these systems in the right way to ensure that we're all adapting and mitigating together?
So something you just said about the policies was going to be my next question to you all. If you were, because there's just so layers upon layers upon layers of issues in terms of preparedness, in terms of economic mobility, in terms of education, just so much. But if you were, from your country's lens, to identify one key policy that needs to be implemented now that would have the most effect, what would it be?
Just transition.
What is
Just energy transition.
Energy transition.
Just energy transition. I think that if we implement that in my state in a just way, we're going to go way, way, way farther. And when I say a just transition, I say, well, when you implement and when you think about public policy to develop solar, wind, any kind of natural energy source generation stuff, you need to create the opportunities and the possibilities for people in the region to develop with the solution. So we are talking about the decentralized way of producing energy, or we're talking about how can green hydrogen impact their lives in a better way. Are we going to produce green hydrogen for to export, or are we going to produce green hydrogen to decarbonize our own industry and economy? I think if we implement a just energy transition, we are going to do great. That's the first step, actually.
I'll add on to that adaptation. So even in hydrogen, a lot of the developments are by the coastal areas because it's near the ports.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have, I think, we talk a lot about energy transition and mitigation, which is a lot of reducing carbon and really capturing it and whatnot. But we tend to forget that there's other impacts as well that are going to impact those centers, and we're not doing enough. Like the entire world is not doing enough when it comes to adapting to a new world where you will have constant impacts of climate change. So how do you mesh them together where you have those plans but also ensure that those plans are not devastated because you have a cyclone or a huge hurricane that kind of wipes out the entire development.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that is needed as well. Yeah.
So,
Yes, okay. Okay, so for me, I'm going to just build on what I just said, because it's country specific and it's regional specific. One of the major issues that we face in Nigeria, like the two of them have said, is actually the issue of energy access. So if we can develop good policies, strategic ones, that help us to, right now the issue may not be decarbonizing, but the issue should be energy access. And what kind of energy are people accessing? Is it the clean one, or what we're telling the developed nation to phase out from? So if we can have that strategic plans, because right now, Nigeria is 200 plus million people, and just 45% have access to electricity. So the remaining 55%, they're living in energy poverty. So those people, if we're trying to electrify Nigeria, what kind of energy source are we giving to them? Are they leaping, or they're going to follow the old path? So we need a good framework that says, okay, we're going to electrify this 100 million people who are living in energy poverty, but what kind of energy source are we giving to them? If we have these plans in place, I think it's going to solve a lot of issues, because we know how energy control a lot of economical and social well-being of the country. And just to add to that, I think one other thing is we need a lot of policy that puts young people at the table. If young people can be on the table, there are a lot of things that we are passionate about. We know what to do. We know what to do. Just give us, the
You're telling us older folks, move out of the way? I think you're right.
So I would talk about the other point, particularly in Mozambique. I say that we face cyclones, and with that, we face life losses. And I think it's because the fragility of our infrastructures. So I think that we can rethink about the sustainable infrastructure policies in Mozambique to reduce the life losses during the cyclones. Yeah.
So I'm going to get personal now because you all are incredible young women. So so I want you to share with us a little bit of your individual stories. How did you get here to this chair that you're sitting in, and to have the knowledge and the thoughts and the work that you're doing now around energy? Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Okay, I am environmental engineer. I think the first one in my family. And I started doing volunteering in Mozambique. And with the first cyclone in 2019, I have family and friends in Sofala province, that was the most affected province by the cyclone Idai. And I was extremely worried because I couldn't talk with them during the cyclone. And I was thinking what I can do here in Maputo province. So I started a movement with other youth to bring together everything that we could, base materials. So with other organization in Maputo city, we could get together all material that were needed and packed to Sofala province, because everything was destroyed, the telecommunications, hospitals, schools, everything. So I think it was the first time that I was able to do something in my country to help other brothers and sisters in Mozambique. So on, I was working in environmental and climate volunteer. And yes, I'm here because I care about the others and the environmental and climate crisis in Mozambique. Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, for me, I usually say proudly, I'm a daughter of a farmer. So when I was growing up, my parents, my dad, he actually left a banking job to start farming. So there was, most times we have issue with, there's not enough yield this year. I think there was a particular year we didn't get Christmas clothes. Like from Nigeria, like every Christmas, you look forward to new clothes, and we didn't get that because that year there was no single harvest for my dad, and there was no money to get like Christmas clothes. So at some point, myself and my sibling were like, why did this man leave a banking job to start farming? These are the kind of crises we're going through as, growing up, but I didn't really understand the concept of climate change and how it affects my dad farming and not able to get us Christmas clothes. So when I got into the universities, most times we don't have electricity and you want to write exams, we go to the ATM machine because there's a light there and you want to study for your exams. So these were issues that we were facing then growing up and in these universities, and I have so many friends who are complaining that these things, we've been experiencing these things since we're young. When is it going to end? And I used to be part of a research group. We were like, okay, we can do something with our research knowledge because I studied maritime engineering. So that we can do something with this knowledge. We came up and said, let's go around educating people and telling them, asking them if they have the same experience and see what we can do. So I became an advocate. I'm still an advocate anyways. I became an advocate for climate change, but going to these communities and village and telling them, oh, fossil fuel is bad, cutting down firewood is not good for the environment. We were doing that for 1 year, but I discovered that I was just saying these things because I'm telling them not to cut down firewood to cook. So how are they going to eat? Yes. I'm telling them not to use fossil fuel generator. Like, how are they going to sleep? So if this is like me taking up their livelihood, which is more worse than climate change. So we come up with the idea and said, let's look for how we can give them this energy access. So at the point I discovered that awareness alone is not just enough. We need to incorporate solution, impact-driven solution into awareness. So from there, I, transit from just being an activist or going around advocating to entrepreneurship. So here I am today by the grace of God.
Wow, so a cyclone, no Christmas clothes, and presents too.
Okay, I think that the story, I think that to talk about why and how I'm here today, I need to talk about the stories of other women that came before me. I was born and raised in a favela in Recife. It's called Nova Divina, and I'm really proud of saying that because I know that I represent these people, and that it's really, really hard to see someone from that region and from that place to occupy spaces like that. So I'm really proud. I'm not ashamed or anything. And I was born and raised by really strong women, and my grandmother is one of them. She ran away from the backcountry of the state because of drawouts, looking for better opportunities in the city. And she was one of the first persons to found the favela that I was born and raised. So like, I was always included in that political situation, a feeling of belonging and fighting for better opportunities. But I knew that with the lack of opportunities and economic options, education was the only way out. So I was the first person to graduate from college in my whole family. And I think that I knew that to empower the people, I had to be empowered first and get education. So I would try and help to find better ways and better solutions for the problems that we faced. And I think that I'm here to make sure that I'm not an outlier, that I'm the first, but I'm not the last, and that young girls and people from other places like that, from underdeveloped regions of Brazil, Latin America, the world, they know that they can make the difference, they can be heard, they can create the change because we know what the problems are, we know what we face, we know what our families faced. I know what problems my grandmother faced when she was fleeing from her problems with my dad, with my 5-year-old dad. So yeah, I think that it all brought together because I know that these problems are going to be way, way worse if we don't do anything with climate change.
Yes, thank you.
So mine is a bit unconventional. I'm new to the energy space. I was a marine scientist before. My story with the environment and climate actually started when I was 10, when I found out that Oman has a nested ground for turtles, marine turtles, which were huge, and that made me so fascinated on how can we work on protecting them. So I ventured into the marine sciences field, came back to Oman. I did my studies in the Netherlands and worked as an environmental consultant for quite a long time, just kind of advising on a lot of the development projects that were coming up. But then one day that changed when my grandfather actually, we did a bet that a woman won't be able to go to the South Pole by herself. And I took that bet and said, 1 year from now, I will actually go to the South Pole. And yeah, I ended up making it to the South Pole. And I think that experience changed dramatically for me in terms of you witnessing climate change firsthand of how it impacts a place that is supposedly untouched, but then you see icebergs cracking and you have fears of avalanche and all that. So that really kind of sped up my momentum of I need to find a way where I can work with a bigger impact of value to the community, but also to the world, that we need to do something. And the best way was to kind of get into alternative energy. So I started in solar and then gradually moved to green hydrogen at the moment, really trying to kind of push that conversation forward in terms of what we can move in terms of development, but also making sure that there's an inclusive voice for young people, which kind of brings me a lot in the activism space with young people and climate change.
Thank you all for sharing because, like I said, you're just so impressive. I love it. So why don't we take a moment because we do want to make sure there's a conversation. If any of you in the audience have a comment or a question, now's the time to raise your hand and we have mics available. And I want to, one here, and then after that, I want to have Rose be prepared. And then after Rose, we'll go back. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Really inspiring to see all the amazing women on one panel sharing different stories and mostly solutions. I think I've just realized there's a commonality on energy, at least for the two, green hydrogen. Then I was also wondering, because those seem to be attached to your jobs and the work you're doing. Is there anything else that you are doing separate from your jobs that is creating impact and adaptive, capacities of different communities? But also, how are you able to balance all these many things, your job, your, advocacy, passion-related work and your life? Thank you.
Okay,
Any one of you can jump in.
okay, I'll go first, but she's my friend too. But anyways, Rose, thank you for you've been sharing and also for that questions. Basically, I've shared with a lot of people that the energy we are providing for the energy technologies are actually community focused. They are not. We are trying to give this energy to rural communities who have little or no access to electricity. And outside of that, one of our also major focus is green skill, because if we're really going to decarbonize and shift the global economy from fossil fuel, you need to shift the workforce as well. So what capacity are we building on that? So we're also focused on, educating fresh graduates or unemployed graduates who doesn't have idea of, when you talk about green space, you don't really know what you're talking about. Trying to create that awareness and also give them the necessary skills and capacity to be ready for the, for the green job. Because in the next 50 years, we're not going to be talking about petroleum and every other thing. So the workforce is going to be green. How do we ensure that people have the capacity to fit into that? So we're trying to, right now we're revolutionizing the green space, like the IT technology, the way it was. So, and in terms of, balancing the work, you know how it is already. You have your professional work, you have your advocacy, then you have to be all of this COP. This is what we do for the planet, like I usually tell people. So it comes with a lot of sacrifice of 3 hours of sleep in a day and trying to balance everything. So yeah.
You don't balance. You just try to do the things that you really want to do and to survive in the meanwhile. But I was in another panel about gender disparities and climate change, and I think it talked about jobs and green jobs and everything. And we are a panel made of women. I think that we need to talk about what are we going to do to make these jobs inclusive for women. We can't we can't tell women that they need to choose between what they want to do professionally and if they want to have children. We need to ensure that these women can do both and that we can choose whatever we want to do. Like if we want to go to green energy, you go ahead, do it. If you want to do something for industry, decarbonizing industries, you can also do it. STEM technology, go ahead, girl, do it, sister. But you can also have your family, you can also take care of your house, or if you don't, go ahead, don't do it. So we need to make sure that we can choose. It's options, right? Yeah. That we can balance that too.
Yeah, and I would say also not to put all women in the same box of they want to do both. Maybe they don't want to do any of them. So that stereotype as well within us as women as well, assuming that we all want the same things, we need to kind of move that discussion away, because that's how, unfortunately, a lot of men think, you all want to have babies or you all want to be professional women. For me, I would say balancing, Google Calendar has been my friend. Like even specifying time for me time and doing nothing is also on the Google Calendar just to make sure that well-being is taken of importance to me. In terms of the other discussion, I think the lovely ladies kind of covered it a lot, but I think in addition to jobs, making sure that these developments that are coming are really providing country value and are building that those domestic industries, be it the SMEs that are going to be coming in, and really making everyone aware that these are opportunities that they can capture is very important. A lot of the public just hear about hydrogen and think it's the next big thing, but they're not involved. So maybe spreading more awareness about that on how they can also be involved will be very important as well to kind of move that discussion. And also, I think we discussed offline on how it's cost intensive and whatnot, but I think as you get more of the momentum and there's more demand from people that they want this, that will be a trickling effect that will drop everything as well.
I would like to share something about the balance. I do advocating, and I'm in the agriculture field. And what I did was to combine those two things because I developed the agriculture content, environmental agriculture content. So I went to my boss and I said, like, why we can combine the content for climate, for example, literacy in agro-environmental content. So I did that, and she said, okay, you can do that. And so I integrated what I'm doing in volunteering in my official job. So I'm doing what I love to do.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. And the question here.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to congratulate you for being utterly fabulous leaders, amazing women, and really inspirational. My question is, in the work that you do in each of your countries and areas, what is it, the support that you really need to do that work, whether it's from national governments, from international organizations, is it local, even in the local community, or from other women? How can others support you? Because you have, so I would give the future to you to manage. You've got it. So how can we support you? And if it's not us, what is it the support we need to ask your countries or international organizations to give you?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is how can we make all this international money that we talk about to fight climate change to subnational governments, to municipalities, to states, because people live in the cities and the money sometimes stay in the federal area, the federal government. So how can we make sure that these much money that we're talking about here at COP goes to the people that need it and to the people that actually make public policy for them? I think that when you go, I mean, I didn't know that I'm from Pernambuco, like I was born and raised there. I work there now, I work with the government, but I didn't know the reality of the administration because we have such a fragile administration in terms of knowledge, money, access, and implementation, that sometimes even though you want to do something and you want to implement, you have really good ideas, you don't have the means. You don't have the means because you don't have people, you don't have money, you don't have infrastructure to do that. So I think that making sure that the money that we're talking about here goes here is the first step. And for international organizations such as One Young World, I think that making sure that the work is being shared and these kind of opportunities, like that we have access to these kind of opportunities, because sometimes we just don't know who to talk to. Or, I mean, I don't have that I don't have the connections that I need to. So how can you make sure that this bridge is a little bit smaller and that we don't need to walk that farther to connect to someone else?
I'll add on to that two things. Allyship, to amplify voices, because most of the time our voices are quite dwindled on the bottom, or capitalize these events that we have, but it's it's way easier for me personally to be in an international event than having a discussion with my local decision maker. That's how difficult it is to kind of go through the labyrinth of bureaucracy. The other thing is sponsorship, and not necessarily money, but sponsorship in terms of taking the accountability as well to make sure that those voices are being heard, and the actions that they want to, you can sponsor those actions to make sure that they see the light of day. Because we tend to hear a lot of, oh, this is amazing, we'll just publish a post or something, but then there's no follow-up on that. And I think those two aspects are very important in addition to what my colleagues have said. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that question, and then your responses lead to the last question for our session today that I want to ask each of you. Because all of us here can do something individually, I want you all to challenge each of us. So tell us what you want us to go back home and do. You're in charge.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. What is the challenge that you want to give to me and to anybody else here individually to go back home and do? What should we be doing?
Support the children and youth in capacity building, because, for example, here I am with 5 more Mozambican youth delegates, and we identify that we need the capacity building from the others, because in the next COP, for example, we want to be in negotiation process. So we need more capacity building for us be able to be there negotiating for our country and to the children and youth from Mozambique. Yeah.
For me, I would say I will end with what I actually said at the beginning, and maybe it's a question to you, and then you can take the action the way that you see fit. What would it take for you to be considered a good ancestor? That's it.
That's it.
Wow. I think I would say vote green, vote young, and vote black when you go back home. So just make sure that the politicians, that your vote represent what you want for the world.
Yeah. For me, I think that most time when we talk about climate action, we focus on our leaders, but individually, what can you do? Like, what can you contribute? Instead of pushing the responsibilities towards the leaders, what can you do? Because in the next 100 years, in retrospect, our children can't say that my parents fought for me to be here, then we failed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I'm leaving this discussion today really inspired, and I am taking your challenges back, and they are recorded, so I'll make sure to go back and write them down. And I just thank you all for your insight, your wisdom, your energy, your love for your people, for the planet, and for our future. So let's give our panelists a warm round of applause. Thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you.